of these, but Paul Tran, thanks so much for joining us. I know when we were talking pre-roll, you mentioned you're on the other side of the country, although born here in the city that I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina, on the other side of the country. So it's good to make, I guess, a past acquaintance, I guess I'll say, or a Charlottonian. But I really, really appreciate you being on. I think what attracted me to maybe inviting you onto our show here, Paul, was just not the fact that you have been in the franchise world before, but you're kind of on the other side of a different industry than what I'm currently in, which is home services, junk removal. Right, you've been on the restaurant side for a while, and so I'm curious to get your feedback on that, and also the ins and outs and the nuances of operating a franchise model in that space, and for our audience as well. So with that, Paul, I'll turn it over to you for an intro. Make it as long or as quick as you want. The floor is all yours.
Well, thanks for having me, man. And when you said you were in Charlotte, I had to smile because, like I told you, I don't have much of a memory. The only memory I have is actually playing in the snow, and it was very positive, and I loved it. So, and also, there's nothing for me to come back to because my parents' house, with all the growth that happened in Charlotte, my house, my whole neighborhood got demolished and turned into a park.
Oh,
so
man.
We have nothing to come back to. So maybe, well, now that I've met you, I guess there's a reason to come back.
Yeah, us, selfishly, as a father now of two young boys, that park would be super useful for us. So unfortunate for the families that live there, but great for everybody else who I guess is trying to raise kids around the city,
Honored to make that sacrifice against my will. But I've been in the restaurant and the franchise industry for about 20 years. It all started with me starting my own restaurant. As a young, overly arrogant, underestimating person, I thought, how hard could it be to start my own restaurant? And so that was actually during the time it was my last year of college. I decided to use my student loan money. It felt like free money, and asked a couple of friends for a partnership. And we just built a Cajun seafood restaurant. Crawfish boils are really huge in the South, not very common in California. So there was a very big gap where it was just such a unique, nuanced concept. And there was only like one other restaurant that did that in California, and the demand was like 100 times the supply. So I just knew that it would just do well. And so I opened that. I ran that for 3 years. For 3 years, thank goodness we did high sales because I made every single stupid mistake possible. And sales definitely absorbs a lot of stupidity. And if you ever want to get into that, that's another episode on its own if you want to digress. But after 3 years, I got an offer to be acquired. So a private investor approached us and wanted to buy us out. At the time, my partners and I, my partners we were still young. My partners wanted to go to grad school. Another one, didn't want to be in the restaurant business. It was just, an itch to scratch. For me, I actually love the business. And during that time, I got a lot of people asking about franchising. I didn't know how to do it. So that pretty much sparked the pathway to just learn more about franchising. So that's when I ended up stumbling upon a company called FranSmart based in DC. They were kind of like an incubator for small restaurant brands. They were known for taking tiny brands that only had 1 to 2 stores and help them scale to hundreds, thousands of locations. And that's when I tried to franchise my own concept. And when I approached the company with my brand, they just said I wasn't ready for it yet. And they just gave a bunch of advice about how to do it. But during that time, I hit it off with the company. And at that time, the company was also in high growth mode. So I just asked like, hey, can I work here? I'd love to learn the business.
Yeah.
And at that time, they were just looking for bodies, and they were willing. I guess I hit it off with them, so they took me on. I ran the business, and I worked for FranSmart concurrently for 2 years before I got bought out. So it kind of overlapped. During that time, I got to learn how to take brands and grow them. At the time, I was on the tail end of FranSmart growing Five Guys burgers. That was when Five Guys, they took Five Guys when they only had 5 stores, and they sold about 300 units. And then it just took off like wildfire. I mean, today they're like in 20 countries and do $1 billion in sales, which is insane. But I got to learn firsthand how that was done. Over the next 10 years, I grew a bunch of other brands as well. Some brands I was able to grow into units. Some brands I took public on the stock exchange. And I also took international and through acquisitions. So I got to learn like the business side of franchising. To this day, I make the joke that I still don't know how to cook, but that's good because that means that it forces me to build a team and recruit people better than me to run stores. But anyway, I consulted. One of the brands that I consulted for was the Halal Guys, a brand that I personally love. Every time I go to New York, I go there, I line up at the cart. kind of don't even worry about going to Statue of Liberty or Empire State Building. I
Yeah.
just go there, and they became a client. And so I just knew that, number one, I knew that California didn't have this available. Same thing as my earlier concept. I just looked around, there wasn't enough supply. So while consulting for them, I asked if I could double dip and not only consult for them and grow them, but also become a franchisee myself.
Yeah.
They agreed. And so I ended up building a team, raising a small fund. And since 2000, we built 11 stores, do about 20 million in sales a year. We lost 2 stores in the pandemic. If you want to get into that, that's some learning lessons too. So, but today we have 9 locations and we do about 15 to 17 million a year. And so, yeah, I do both. I left FranSmart in 2000 to focus on my Halal Guys stores, but since then I still double dip. I just advise for franchisors that want to grow, and I also operate my own stores. I think that gives me a unique perspective because it allows me to make sure franchisor interests and franchisee interests are always aligned. They tend to not be aligned and just needs to be regulated every now and then. So I feel like that's my unique perspective, but that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I'm curious to go back to the beginning though. So what intrigued you most about the food industry and going?
It was a total accident. I mean, again, like I think I'd say that most of the most important things that ever happen to your life always happen on accident, unexpected. So I always say you need to plan 50% of your life and leave the other 50% for things that are better than you can ever imagine. But as far as food, I mean, I'm a foodie. I love eating food. I live to eat, not eat to live. Also, I just believe that no matter what happens, technology wise or any trends, at the end of the day, 8 billion people wake up hungry, and they wake up hungry 3 to 5 times a day. So if you do a good job and you are the most convenient choice, you serve food that's delectable and you serve people with kindness, like you get to have, you kind of have job security there or business security there. So, and yeah, I mean, the food industry is also a great equalizer too. People of all walks of life, like they need to eat, and it's a great way to connect. And so I just have this romantic relationship with food. And so, yeah.
I think that's great. Yeah. Outside looking in, as a business owner, the food industry is one that, and I don't know if it's just because of so many voices, out there in the world online, scare folks away from the food industry. It's a tough business. It's super saturated. Margins are slim. You got to work in the business like all the time if you want it to be successful. Like you hear that type of stuff, and that doesn't give you the goody two shoe feeling as of getting into business ownership. If your goal is to get out of the rat race of corporate America, and be like, let me go over here and work 7 days a week, and if I'm not there, then the business is going to be failing. So, what are some of those like nuances that attracted you to the food industry more specifically to get past those hurdles? And like, what did you experience in the food industry that maybe other industries don't have to deal with that's just like unique to the food industry?
Yeah, I had to laugh because you said you leave the rat race. Yeah, you're leaving one rat race and you're getting into another.
Yeah.
And what's worse about the new rat race is that your boss is a jerk and you can't leave them. But no, as far as food, I mean, I guess like I alluded to earlier, it's you have to love the business.
Right.
Like you said, everything that you said, all the concerns, they're true. I mean, it's generally lower margin. It's generally fraught with so much drama and, of course, rising minimum wage rates definitely put too much upward cost pressure. But I think at the same time, it's an exciting business because whereas like real estate and other businesses where you may get like 1 to 10 transactions a month, with restaurants, the energy is electrifying because you get transactions a day. So I think people need to be addicted to the adrenaline of that. And I think being able, and also the business has a really good cash flow as well. Like you get to see the cash flow is pretty immediate. It may not always be profitable, but the cash flow is there. So it helps you with, managing expenses and costs better. I think the pressures, even though they're there, like I think it's an amazing challenge to figure out how to lower the costs, like using technology, managing your food costs better, managing your labor. I think most restaurant owners, they don't know what their numbers are. And because of that, of course, they'll never make money because most of the times, like restaurant owners die by like 1,000 cuts with all these costs that sneak under and fall through the cracks. So I think if you have an amazing team and you are willing to commit to managing your numbers, it could be super profitable. And it's built so much wealth for myself and also all the clients and all the brands that I serve. So there's money to be made. It's just you need to really love the business. You need to give a damn about the business, and you need to be treated like a business. It just can't just be a romantic relationship with food, but you just need to manage it like a business.
I think what you said a minute ago about just the sheer number of transactions is actually interesting. I've never thought about that. My background's in sales, specifically tech sales, and I can attest to that. Like, I'm very used to going through a sales process that could be done in a week or two, or it could drag out to be 6, 12, 18 months long before you get that initial purchase order. But that dopamine hit when you get that purchase order, however large or small it is, whether it's $1 million PO or it's for $500, it still gets you going. It kind of fuels you to go after and get the next thing. So I can imagine in the restaurant business how that feels, especially if you get something out of the ordinary, I guess, right? Maybe it's a big tip, or you got a large party that came in and they were happy with the service and they walk away and you were able to put them down with a $2,000 bill or whatever it is. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, what you experienced in that industry with sales, right? Retail business, restaurant business, you've obviously got foot traffic, people can see your store, that sort of thing. What were you doing then to drive more sales, whether that was online, boots on the ground? And then what would your suggestion be to folks? Specifically, I'm curious about the food industry and restaurants. What would you tell folks to lean into, business owners to lean into if they own a restaurant, just branding and how to drive more sales outside of just the foot traffic you're naturally going to get to wherever you're located?
Yeah, great questions. I'd say, the largest lead domino is hopefully being in the most convenient location out there. The rule of locations still apply. You definitely want to be in the same center as all the co-tenants that serve the same customer as yours. One of my best locations for the Halal Guys, it was next to a Chick-fil-A and next to an In-N-Out Burger. Number one, they've already taken the risk of driving all the traffic and building the market there. Of course, they've done all of their homework with capabilities that I can't even afford myself. And, at the end of the day, they can't. Well, some people can probably eat In-N-Out Burger every single day, but they can't. And generally, people can't eat the same food every single day. So if you're within view and you're conveniently there, they're eventually going to give you a try, and that's your opportunity to win them over, and that secures their business. The locations still apply, but now I'd like to treat social media as the second real estate. I think when people post consistently and they post great shots, people eat with their eyes, people make decisions on where they eat before they even hop into the car. So you need to have a really good social media presence. And it's crazy because social media is generally free. People just aren't harnessed because it's free. They don't treat it seriously. But my team and I, we have a Instagram account with 80 followers. So every time we post something, our stores get busy. And that's sheer hard work and effort to just post consistently and post food that makes people salivate. And so we don't take that platform for granted. The third thing is, nowadays competition is so competitive, right? There's so many options, at least in our area, of course in Charlotte too. The best, again, you need to be the most convenient choice. And so we've started focusing a lot more on catering. Instead of waiting for our customers to come through our doors, we just go out and get them. We go door to door, we take orders, we bust through security doors, not bust through, but we just go in unannounced, and we go without asking for permission and saying, hey, we want to give you guys some free food. And because of that, we've been able to get a bunch of catering orders where before we even open for the day, we sometimes get 1,000 catering orders.
Wow.
That's a great way to secure the profitability of your store, maximizes your existing staff, takes care of downtime in between lunch and dinner, stuff like that. And so again, to answer your question about all the low profitability things, yes, it's low profit if you believe that. But if you believe that you can be a lot more profitable, then you'll figure out a way. It's all in mind, the story you tell yourself. But anyway, hope that helps.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm a big proponent of social media because I think that's just where the eyeballs are, right? I think regardless, especially today, it would have been a different conversation in probably even 2010, but certainly in 2000, folks starting to talk about Facebook and other platforms. YouTube, I know, was coming online then, but today, that's where everybody goes, regardless of whether you're 15 years old or you're 55, 75, even older folks have access and use a social media platform. At least a lot of them do.
For sure.
And I feel like if you can build a brand, and totally agree with, especially in the restaurant business, you can get me salivating very easily with a great photo and a good caption, right? And I'm I can get it. But I think what's even more important there is just building brand. And I think that's tough. And it's still even tough for me to really fathom what branding really means. I feel like I have a better grasp on it today than I did even a year or two ago. But in the restaurant business, I know in our service-based business, brand will positively impact our future sales.
For sure.
I'm curious to know in the restaurant space how much branding can actually drive sales, because what naturally comes to mind is Chick-fil-A. But they've checked so many other great boxes, right? It's tasty, it's convenient, it's, price point's great. But then to your point, they're in a lot of great locations, but their brand is built really around like just the experience there. And so if you can create some sort of, if you can have a restaurant that has really great tasting food, it's cost effective and it's convenient, but people just genuinely love the experience, and you can tell that story online somehow, whether even outside of just posting great food pics, but just getting to know the managers and the owners of the business and, top down. I feel like that is a strategy across all sectors that could and should yield positive benefits for everybody. If I could go back, Paul, to, on the franchisor side, what are some things that new emerging brands getting into, whether it's restaurant business, service-based, whatever, what are some things that the franchisors need to be aware of getting into the franchise space, just high level, that you can think of? Like nuances that we may not even know exist in the franchise world that you're like, hey, you probably need to know about this and start thinking about it today.
Great question as well. And it's funny, I've been doing this for so long, but there's still so many nuances that I still encounter today. Because again, times have changed, people are different, the brand is different, the DNA is different, so much different context too. So I will say that a lot of times, no matter how experienced I am or the franchisors are, there's still a lot to learn. I mean, one of the things that do come to mind when you ask that is, at least for the restaurant business, I usually tell aspiring franchisors that you are now creating two companies. You're now no longer in the you're no longer serving consumers. You're now serving entrepreneurs. You're now in the B2B business, and you need to you're no longer managing a bunch of college kids or high school kids that are serving food. Now where you can train them and mold them. You're now like managing a lot of quite successful people who sometimes have large egos and they have their own agendas. And so it's just a different dynamic that people need to be prepared of. You can't treat the entrepreneurs the same way you treat children or the high school kids. So you need to manage differently. I think most people are either lazy or they just, that's all they know, that they just treat and manage the business the same way the whole way through. But unfortunately, people are different and the type of persona is different. So that's definitely going to be something to keep in mind of. Not necessarily like a one size fits all answer, but it's just something to be aware of and to have a lot of compassion about that. Second thing is, the customers you serve are now your business owners, and your biggest goal of a franchisor is to make your franchisees so damn successful that they, number one, want to continue building more stores. Number two, they're so committed and they don't need to do anything else. Number three, if you make them so profitable, they're going to be more incentivized to keep the brand promises. You know what I mean? Like, for example, Chick-fil-A, you just chat about Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A makes the franchise operators so profitable. They have the money, they have the budget to hire the best people, to invest in technology, to go above and beyond. If franchisees are not successful and they're not profitable, no matter how good the intentions are, because they don't have enough money, they're going to start cutting corners. They're going to start hiring less qualified people. And it just trickles down and the brand gets deteriorated. So I'd say your biggest goal is to make franchisees so damn profitable and successful that they are happy, more than honored, to honor your brand standards. If you make them profitable, they'll do whatever you want them to do.
That's amazing, just conceptually, to think of it that way, man. From managing kind of your field teams, your actual employees, to managing people and business owners. I hadn't thought of it that way.
It trickles down, right?
Yeah, but before that, because we're in a position now where we've franchised our business concept. We have an FD. We've got a great website. We think we've got an ops manual, and there's a lot of other things that I can raise my hand and be like, look, I don't even know. There's some things that we probably haven't even heard of yet that we're going to have to be prepared for. But we feel like we have a lot of decent pillars in place. Now we need to go out and start building a pipeline of interested candidates, franchisee candidates, to start vetting and see if they're a fit for Junk Raider, and vice versa, see if we're a fit for them. What's your suggestion for franchisors around where to go for help and when to do it? Meaning FSOs, franchise sales organizations. Should you start right out of the gates with an FSO, a broker network? I know you mentioned you were with FranSmart for a while. When is it good for an emerging brand to go and seek help?
This one is an unpopular opinion, and I'm probably going to get some hate
Yeah.
for it. But so I've been fortunate to sell over 1,000 franchises for various brands, and out of all the one, I'd say less than 1% have been through broker networks.
Mm. Okay.
And not to say that brokers aren't a viable source. I know a lot of brands that have used broker networks. My issue is that you are in the early beginning, like you need to be the brand. You need to be the one that sells it. You need to be the one that vets the best franchisees early on. You
Mm-hmm.
can't let that go yet because no one can communicate the brand better than you. So I'd say in the early on, like unfortunately, the franchisor is gonna have to like do the hard work with reaching out to the right franchisees and do all the networking, get on the podcasts, get on all the press. Because people early on, when your brand is not proven, there's not a crazy long track record yet, they're gonna have to rely on, because that pillar is not there, they're gonna have to overly index on the person.
Yeah.
And so when you outsource that, you give that control away. And if you think about it, if you give it away to an FSO or broker network too early, these brokers, they're incentivized by closing deals. And if like your brand doesn't have enough track record, they're probably not going to give you enough attention.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're like the hot brand, which is an anomaly. So they're going to throw 100 brands at a potential franchisee and hope one of them sticks. They don't have your best interests at heart yet, until they know that there's something unique or you're growing rapidly or there's proof of concept. So I'd say FSOs, when do you go for help? I just would rather do it yourself. I would rather you focus on you creating content, and you've seen my content on LinkedIn. We didn't use any broker networks for that. It was upon me to create the content because I needed to control the narrative the right way. And that was what attracted the deals that I've closed and the traction that we've gotten. So no broker networks, at least for me, unless it's like an amazing broker, which is case by case. I normally just stay away and just try to control the narrative as much as I can. Again, my work with franchisors is always early stage. And so early stage, I don't recommend it. When you start hitting like 100, 200 stores, now the broker networks is a viable source because now they are more interested in selling you because they know they can probably close deals with you. Hope that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. So I'm curious now, like if you're in our position and you don't go and seek help, like let's do all the organic stuff. Let's start maybe you start dabbling a little bit in some paid ads. Maybe you get on Google and do paid ads there, Facebook, what have you. But what is your suggestion on where you really lean into, right? Is it simply creating content like podcasts and other social media and just getting as much as you can out over the airwaves and hoping that inbound leads come in? Or is there an outbound focus or element to like what we can be doing to reach out strategically to folks that may have a good background and fit well with us?
Yes to all of it. So with Roll 'em Up, with a brand that I worked on, and also all the other brands I've ever worked on, it's a very, I guess, early on, again, because you don't have a lot of track record and traction yet, you do need to not limit your point of entry. So I actually have a team that does cold calling. We use databases of FDDs because FDDs have contact information of other franchisees. We also do LinkedIn as well. And there's also other ways that we reach out to existing franchisees of other brands. And we usually send them a pitch and say, hey, wanted to introduce myself. We're this brand and we're growing really rapidly. We would love to continue with the growth with the right franchisees.
Yeah.
Can I send you more info? And so we've gotten some fairly good amount of interest there. I really believe that content creation is heavily underserved. If you see LinkedIn, most of LinkedIn content is quite boring. And I'd like to believe that my content has focused on just making it more fun, more insightful. I think most brands create content focus on consumers. They don't create content focus on getting investors and franchisees interested. So if you'll notice, my content is not meant for consumers. You'll read it, you'll be like, okay, this is not for consumer. This is clearly for someone interested in franchising. Most people think that they can use the same content for consumers to business franchisees, which is completely wrong. You do need to make that extra effort and change the angle. They need to work together because I've done a good job doing cold calling, getting people interested in the brand. But when they visit the brand and there's not content that helps, then the deal dies. So they need to work in conjunction. And yes, paid ads is also a viable source. Getting picked up by PR, the magazines, the publications is going to be good. What's cool about your concept is that, I mean, gosh, every time you help a customer, like you can write about it, you can chat about how you got that customer, and you can just chat about all these things like, we're excited. If you're interested in franchising or doing this in your neighborhood, let us know. We would love to grow with the right people who care about what we care about. So Yeah.
I think that the point you made about reaching out to other existing franchisees at other brands is genius. I honestly hadn't thought of that. So give me a little bit more feedback there, Paul, on just what does that interaction look like? Well, how's that received from a franchisee? Now that you said that, it makes a lot of sense. Like if I went and bought a painting franchise and I own a single territory here in Charlotte, I'm either looking to probably expand within that same brand and own other territories, or if that becomes successful, I get a niche and I like this franchising world. I may, go out and be looking for junk removal companies or anything else home service related that kind of fits within that realm. So when your team's reaching out to existing franchisees, is that a well-received message? Like, thanks for reaching out, I'm actually very interested. Or is it like, stay in your lane, like I'm cool over here? What's that like?
Again, you're going to get a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Both of those scenarios I've seen play out. I'm excited about your industry because if you think about what other services people need when they do junk removal, those are probably owned by franchisees of those brands. Or for example, I'm making stuff up. Do most of the people that need junk removal, are they moving or are they selling, or what? Like, tell me the makeup of your customers generally.
Yeah, it's really a mixed bag. Definitely, if someone's moving, like we work with a lot of realtors. So,
Okay.
at time of closing, somebody may be moving into a house and the previous owner left a bunch of stuff and they're like, "God, I need this gone now." Right.
Yeah.
So that's where we're very much like same day, next day service. Like if you don't have that capability, then you're not a player in our space.
Yeah.
But it's very reactionary, right? Sally Sue goes out in her garage and it's spring cleaning and she gets overwhelmed with how much stuff is there. So she goes to Google and she's searching for best price and who can come today to get this done. And so you better be really good with online marketing and popping up on the first page of Google, have a lot of good reviews, and answer the phone when they call, and be in line with your pricing, and also be able to get on site same day. So that's the residential side, very much so reactive. And then you've got the commercial side, which are, think retail or, restaurant business folks, like a Dollar General, a Walmart, a Target, like they have partnerships with junk removal companies that have national coverage that can take care of any junk removal need that they have at 1,000 stores that they have, whether that's pallets that have piled up out back, old buggies, people illegally dumping mattresses and things by their dumpsters. Like there's that side of the business, which I would say is much more outbound on our side to go and grab that business versus them coming inbound, although we've seen it kind of both ways, but much more outbound from our side.
So to jump off of what you said, like I guess I'll give a different example. I know a couple of roofing franchisors who pretty much cold call and prospect franchisees of like fencing businesses and painting businesses. And they're just like, you're already reaching out to the customer. It's an easy sell to add another product. So they can take care of the painting. And then after that, by the way, like, do you also need removal of the junk? So now they get to make money. They get to double dip as well. You know me, I love double dipping. And so you get to kind of have your hand in the pocket in a positive way every step, like what is it, horizontally vertical integrating. It's just an easy sell because number one, they already know franchising. Number two, they already serve that customer and they're always looking for ways to grow the business and build more loyalty with customers. And if they can be a more convenient choice for all that by partnering up with Junk Raider, like it would make sense. It's an easier sell, and they probably have the money as well, which is qualified. So with Roll 'em Up, I cold called a lot of people who were existing franchisees of other brands. So some of the franchisees are franchise operators of like Dunkin' Donuts and a tropical smoothie cafe. What's cool about them is number one, they already capitalized. They have experience and need very little like hand holding. Most of the times, these brands like Dunkin' Donuts and Tropical Smoothie, they have thousands of stores. That means that most likely their territory has already been maxed out. And so now they could use their existing local market knowledge, their existing team, and all the existing infrastructure they've already built and just plug in a brand. So it's easier to sell to them. But again, it's also a chicken or the egg situation because early on, a lot of franchisees are also hesitant to get in with a new brand, right? They want to buy a brand that's more mature. So you'll need to do that at the same time, be open to like new franchisees who inquire and maybe not have the experience. But as long as they're coachable and they can do well, then you also have to play that field as well.
Yeah.
So it's
Paul,
both.
we were talking pre-roll about why I do this show, and candidly, these points that you're giving are exactly why I do it. I know I mentioned that I want to help folks out there, and hopefully everything, a lot of what you've said, folks can take some nuggets away and implement them in their business. That one piece that you just mentioned about reaching out to other franchisees is gold for me. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm glad.
We'll definitely implement it into our process, literally ASAP. And I know we're kind of up on our time here, so I'll ask one last question for you, Paul.
Sure.
If you could go with, it's one we like to always end with. If you could go back to your early days, whenever that was, getting out of school, after you started your first business, whatever, and do anything differently or give your younger self some advice, what would you do? What would you say?
It's twofold. The first one is it's one of those things where I'm where I'm at today because of all the silly things that I've done or all the stupid stuff and all the good things. So kind of don't want to change anything, right? Because there's so many things that wouldn't have happened if I had not done what I did. So that's one angle. But I know that that doesn't make people happy with my answer. So if I were to go back and change anything, I would say two things. The first one is I would just take a lot more risks and try more things. I think fear, the things you always worry about either never happen, or if they do happen, you can recover and you learn. So I think we have just such a debilitating relationship with fear. You either win or you learn is how I should think about it. And number two, the sooner you like stop caring about what other people think or a certain way that you have to behave, the sooner you can find who you really are and have a much better, much more rewarding life. I was just chatting with someone about this not long ago because early on when I sold franchises, I was still in my early 20s, and it was scary because when I was selling franchises to people twice my age, and I always felt like I had to behave professionally and behave a certain way and dress up a certain way. And it was just, even though it was rewarding financially, it was not fun, like authentically.
Yeah.
And now you can tell from my LinkedIn, like I just joke around, make silly memes and stuff. Like I feel like I'm finally starting to feel like my true self. And I've never been more successful. I've never been more happy with the work I do. And I feel like my work is even more important and impactful because I got to unlock all of me versus behaving a certain professional way. So anyway, I'm probably all over the place with that one, but that's what comes to mind.
No, that's great. Amazing insights all around. And I love a lot of what you've said here, Paul. So I appreciate you jumping on. We'll end it with that, but I'm sure we could, do a part 2, 3, and 4, and maybe we'll do it. But for that and everybody in the audience, again, I hope you gleaned some insights here from Paul and his world in franchising. And if you're running a business, going to start a business, feel free to reach out to either one of us. Paul, where can folks find you if you even want them to find you? We'll link it here.
I'd say my website is probably the best starting point. It has all my socials. It's paultran.com, so it's 2 T's. And then feel free to follow me on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. I'm probably the most active on both of those platforms. And thank you again for having me, man. Again, like I said, podcasters are ones that I appreciate because it's like a super generous act of love. So thank you for having me, man.
Well, it's guests like you that make it all worth it and make it possible. So thank you for joining. We'll end it there.
My pleasure, man.